The last war for Earth. The day the sun went dark. The world changed in an instant. It was supposed to be an ordinary day. The sun had risen as usual, and people had gone about their lives, driving to work, opening shops, attending schools. Then, without warning, the sky went black. Not like an eclipse, not like a storm. The sun was still there, but its light no longer reached Earth. Panic spread within minutes. Governments scrambled for answers, but no scientific explanation made sense. Telescopes still saw the sun burning in space, yet the planet was bathed in unnatural darkness. The vanishing sky. NASA, ESA, and other space agencies lost contact with their satellites. One by one, all beyond Earth's atmosphere went silent. The International Space Station, lunar bases, even deep space probes. Gone. Scientists stared at their screens in horror. No debris, no explosion, just emptiness where technology once floated. Radio stations filled with speculation. Was it a solar anomaly? A new type of warfare? Theories spread like wildfire, but no one had real answers. Then, at exactly 3:33 p.m. UTC, they arrived. The first wave. The invaders did not descend in ships. They did not come with lights or engines. They formed from the darkness itself. Cities around the world, New York, Beijing, London, Moscow, Tokyo, reported shifting shadows moving through streets, taking on shapes that were almost human but not quite. Some were tall, others short, their forms constantly changing, like ink swirling in water. When they touched a person, that person vanished. No scream, no blood, just gone. The military reacted fast. Armored vehicles rolled into the streets. Soldiers took their positions. Jets roared through the sky. Bullets, missiles, even nuclear warheads were unleashed. Nothing worked. Every weapon that struck the entities disappeared into nothingness, as if reality itself was being erased. Global collapse. Governments fell into chaos. Power grids failed. Half the world was plunged into total darkness, with no way to communicate. Some believed it was the end of the world. Others thought it was an experiment gone wrong. In Washington, D.C., the U.S. president met with top generals in an underground bunker. In Beijing, the Chinese military prepared for a last stand. In Moscow, nuclear silos were readied. Nothing mattered. The entities moved freely, unharmed by anything humanity threw at them. The world's mightiest armies became powerless. The warning. Then, amidst the chaos, a signal was detected. It wasn't coming from Earth. It wasn't from the invaders either. It came from beyond the solar system. Astronomers in Australia, Japan, and Germany all reported the same thing. A message in a strange, pulsating frequency. It repeated in every known human language. Do not fight them. You cannot win. Silence followed. For the first time, the world truly understood what was happening. This was not an invasion. This was extermination. Let me know if you want any improvements or more detail in certain areas. The deathless ones. The world was crumbling. Not because of war or disease, but because of something far worse. Erasure. They came without warning, figures of pure darkness, walking silently through the streets. Their presence made the air heavy, like a crushing weight on the soul. Anyone they touched was simply gone. No body, no blood, just empty space where a person had been. What made it even worse was that no one remembered the erased. Families forgot their loved ones. Friends forgot their friends. It was as if those people had never existed at all. The military fought back with everything they had. Bullets, missiles, even nuclear weapons. Nothing worked. The moment a weapon struck them, it vanished, just like the people. Tanks rolled forward, but as soon as they made contact with the invaders, they disappeared, leaving nothing behind. Scientists worked desperately to understand what was happening. They analyzed the strange readings, the disturbances in reality itself. After weeks of research, they made a terrifying discovery. These things, Dr. Elena Carter said, staring at the data on her screen, they're not from another planet. They're from another reality. Her words spread across the world like wildfire. People had expected an alien invasion, something from the stars. But this was far worse. These beings were beyond human understanding, beyond anything science had ever imagined. Governments collapsed as fear spread. Some people fled to underground bunkers, hoping to hide. Others gave up entirely, believing there was no escape. The world grew quieter each day as more and more people vanished. A survivor's tale. Then something unexpected happened. A man appeared at a refugee camp near the ruins of London. His clothes were torn, his face covered in dirt and blood. But his eyes burned with something no one had seen in weeks. Hope. "My name is David Cross," he said, his voice trembling but determined. "I saw something they don't want us to see." The crowd gathered around him, desperate for answers. He had come from New York, a city long thought to be lost. He had watched it vanish, street by street, as the invaders walked through it. "I should be gone too," he said, shaking his head. "I was there. I was standing right in the middle of it." A woman, a former journalist, stepped forward. "Then how are you still here?" she asked. David took a deep breath. "Because I saw something before the erasure. A door in the sky." Silence. "No one else saw it," he continued. "But just before everything disappeared, just before the invaders erased the last building in the city, a massive door opened above us. It wasn't made of metal or wood. It was like a crack in reality itself." The scientist, Dr. Carter, who had been listening, stepped closer. "A door?" she asked, her mind racing. "A way in or a way out?" "I don't know," David admitted. "But I know this. The invaders came from the other side. And if they came through it, maybe, just maybe, we can send them back. A new hope or a trap." The camp exploded with whispers. Some thought David had lost his mind. Others believed he was humanity's last hope. Dr. Carter immediately contacted the remaining scientists. They had detected dimensional disturbances before, but they had never considered looking for an actual door. "We need to find it," she said urgently. "If David saw it once, we can find it again." But there was a problem. The invaders were still out there, and they were erasing more of the world every day. If they found out what David knew, he might be their next target. And if that happened, no one would remember him at all. The architect of oblivion. The sky was broken. Above the ruins of Earth's last defenses, the door had appeared. It was not made of metal or stone, but of something beyond human understanding. It twisted, pulsed, and shifted like a living thing, stretching across the heavens like an ancient scar. The invaders, the ones who had brought fire and death, were nothing compared to what lay beyond it. Commander Elias Carter stood on the remains of a collapsed skyscraper, his armor scorched and his rifle nearly empty. His team was down to their last bullets. The war had already pushed humanity to the edge. And now, this was something else. Dr. Naomi Voss, the lead scientist of Earth's resistance, watched in horror from a nearby bunker. She had spent her life studying the cosmos, but nothing could have prepared her for this sight. The massive structure hanging in the sky was older than Earth itself. The readings from their instruments made no sense. It was as if the door existed outside of time. Then, the invaders did something strange. They stopped fighting. All across the battlefield, the towering alien soldiers halted. Their insect-like limbs twitched, their weapons lowered. Even their monstrous war machines came to a standstill. It was as if they, too, were afraid. Elias saw it first. The ships of the invaders were retreating, pulling back toward the sky, toward the door. He narrowed his eyes. "They're running," he muttered. Naomi's voice came through his earpiece. "Not running," she said. "They're retreating to their master." And then the voice came. It did not speak in words. It was a force, a presence, something that touched the minds of every human left alive. A whisper that carried through space and time. You are not the first. The words hit like a shockwave. People across the world collapsed, clutching their heads. The voice was inside them, weaving through their thoughts. You are not the last. Elias gritted his teeth, his mind burning with visions. He saw worlds, countless planets, each different, yet all the same in the end. Civilizations rising, building, reaching for the stars, only to be wiped away. He saw cities crumbling, oceans boiling, entire species reduced to dust. The invaders were not conquerors. They were messengers, harbingers of something greater. Naomi stared at the sky, her fingers digging into the control panel. She had always feared this possibility. The idea that intelligent life was being pruned, erased before it could reach its true potential. The voice returned, its presence colder than death. You have reached the threshold. Your time is over. Naomi's hand shook. No, she whispered. Deep beneath the earth, something awakened. The forgotten morning. In an underground research facility, far below the mountains of South America, a seismic event triggered alarms. Scientists rushed to their instruments, confusion spreading like wildfire. A transmission was being received, but it wasn't coming from space. It was coming from Earth's core. Miles below, an ancient machine stirred. It had been buried for eons, locked away beneath layers of rock and magma. A final message, left behind by those who came before. A holographic recording flickered to life. The image was blurry, distorted by time, but the figure was humanoid. Not human. The voice was weak, but the words were clear. We were here before you. The scientists froze. The message was not a warning. It was a farewell. The architect is coming. Naomi's breath caught in her throat. The architect. That was the name. The entity behind it all. The destroyer of civilizations. The eraser of history. Elias felt the air grow heavier. The sky darkened as something moved beyond the door. It was impossible to see, yet he could feel its presence, a weight pressing down on his soul. He lifted his rifle. It was a foolish gesture. What good was a gun against something that had ended billions of worlds? But he would fight anyway. Because that was what humanity did. And if they were to fall, they would make sure the architect remembered their name. The last stand of science. The world was running out of time. The invaders had already wiped out half of Earth's population. Every battle ended the same way. Humanity losing, the enemy advancing. No weapon, no strategy, nothing had worked. But then, a message was found. It was ancient, buried deep in the ice of Antarctica, encoded in a language older than human civilization. Scientists worked day and night to decode it, hoping it held the key to survival. Finally, they succeeded. The message spoke of a weapon, a powerful device hidden beneath Antarctica for 5 million years. A weapon designed to defeat an unstoppable enemy. The military wasted no time. General Marcus assembled an elite team of soldiers, scientists, and engineers. Their mission was clear: retrieve the weapon before it was too late. The descent into darkness. A massive drilling machine cut through the ice, revealing the hidden passage leading deep underground. The team, led by Captain Ryan, descended into the unknown. Their flashlights flickered as they moved through ancient tunnels, carved by something not human. Dr. Evelyn Carter, the lead scientist, studied the strange markings on the walls. This isn't human work, she whispered. This is something else. Keep moving, Captain Ryan ordered. We don't have time for mysteries. After hours of careful exploration, they reached a colossal chamber. In the center stood a massive structure, smooth, metallic, and untouched by time. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its surface. This is it, Dr. Carter said, her voice shaking with excitement and fear. The weapon. The truth revealed. As they approached, the ground trembled. Something was waking up. The structure hummed with energy, and a deep voice, ancient and powerful, spoke inside their minds. You are not the ones who built me. The team froze. The voice was not human. Dr. Carter stepped forward. Who are you? The voice responded, its tone filled with something that almost felt like disappointment. You were never meant to find this. Suddenly, the structure shifted. What they had thought was a weapon was something else entirely. Panels slid open, revealing a massive figure, tall, otherworldly, and ancient beyond comprehension. Its body was not flesh, not metal, but something in between. That's not a machine, Captain Ryan whispered. That's a being. Dr. Carter's breath caught in her throat. The architects, she said, her voice barely a whisper. They left this here. The being looked at them, its glowing eyes filled with unreadable emotions. You seek a weapon to destroy your enemy, but you do not understand. The war you fight is older than your species. We fought them once, and we lost. The team stared in shock. If the architects, the beings who had once shaped the universe, had lost, what chance did humanity have? A choice to make. General Marcus, speaking through the radio, demanded answers. Can it help us or not? Dr. Carter swallowed hard. We don't know. The being turned its gaze to her. You must decide, human. This is not a weapon. It is knowledge. A path. Power that can change your species forever. But it comes with a cost. Captain Ryan tightened his grip on his rifle. What cost? The being's voice was cold. Evolution. To survive, you must become more than human. If you refuse, you will perish. Silence filled the chamber. This was no longer just about winning a war. This was about what humanity was willing to become. And time was running out. The betrayal of reality. The leaders of Earth stood in a dimly lit underground chamber, their faces pale as they stared at the glowing device before them. The reality anchor, a weapon unlike any other. It had the power to reshape existence itself. But there was a terrible price. Dr. Elias Carter, one of the last surviving scientists, cleared his throat. His voice trembled. To activate it, we must erase half of Earth's population. Silence. President Lian Zhao of the Eastern Coalition shook her head in disbelief. We can't even consider this. We're fighting to save humanity, not sacrifice it. General Vasquez, head of the Western Defense Command, slammed his fist on the table. And what if we don't? The architect's corruption spreads by the hour. Cities are disappearing into nothingness. If we wait too long, there won't be anyone left to save. The room erupted into argument. Some leaders believed the sacrifice was necessary. Others swore they would rather die than commit such an atrocity. All the while, the reality around them continued to decay. The shape of the enemy. Outside, the sky twisted like a shattered mirror. Entire streets flickered in and out of existence. People caught in the unstable zones found their bodies stretching, breaking, and vanishing, erased from time itself. Satellite feeds showed the enemy was changing. The architect's army was no longer just monstrous creatures of shadow and metal. A deeper horror was revealing itself. A vast void was swallowing history itself. Landmarks, monuments, and even entire civilizations wiped away as if they had never existed. Even memories were fading. People struggled to recall events from just days ago. And then, for the first time, the architect spoke, the voice of the unseen. Across every radio, television, and digital screen, a single voice echoed. I did not come to destroy. I came to correct a mistake. The world fell silent. Every human being, from soldiers on the battlefield to children hiding in underground bunkers, froze as they heard the voice. It was not mechanical, not alien. It was calm, familiar, almost human. President Lian Zhao whispered, "What does it mean? What mistake?" Dr. Carter's hands shook as he studied the data streams coming from the reality anchor. A terrifying realization dawned on him. The architect. It's not just some alien force. It's trying to fix something. General Vasquez narrowed his eyes. Fix what? Carter swallowed hard. Us. The impossible truth. The architect continued, its voice filled with something strange. Not anger, not malice. Regret. Your world was never meant to exist. In that moment, something shattered in the minds of humanity. The war, the suffering, the endless collapse of reality. None of it was an invasion. It was a correction. Humanity was a mistake, a glitch in the structure of existence, and the architect had come to erase that mistake. The leaders of Earth, once divided over the reality anchor, now faced a greater horror. This was not a battle for survival. This was a battle for justification, for the right to exist. And the worst part, they still didn't know if the architect was right. The war that never was. The architect stood in the ruined command center, surrounded by flickering screens and the hum of failing machinery. His face was grim as he watched the battle outside. Earth's last defenders were being erased, not killed, but erased from existence. Ships vanished mid-flight. Soldiers disappeared as if they had never been born. Colonel Hayes slammed his fist against the table. What the hell is happening? He demanded. We have the firepower. We have the strategy. Why are we losing? The architect turned to him, his eyes hollow. Because this was never a war, he said. It's a correction. Hayes frowned. Correction. The architect took a deep breath. Humanity was never meant to exist. Someone, something, interfered in the past, changing history. The invaders aren't attacking us. They're fixing time itself. Silence fell over the room. The weight of those words was too much to bear. But why? Whispered Dr. Monroe, the chief scientist. Why erase us? The architect walked to the central console and pressed a button. A hologram appeared, showing Earth's timeline like a twisting, broken thread. Something unnatural happened millions of years ago, he explained. Humanity wasn't part of the original design. Our existence is a paradox, and now, time is collapsing. Outside, the world was already breaking apart. Buildings warped and disappeared. The sky flickered between night and day. The oceans rippled as if reality itself was cracking. Hayes clenched his jaw. Then we fight back. We stop them. Monroe shook her head. How do you fight time? The architect turned back to the console. There's one way, he said. The reality anchor. The last hope. The reality anchor was humanity's final weapon. It wasn't designed to destroy, but to stabilize, to hold a single moment in place against the chaos of time. Deep underground, in a hidden bunker, the last surviving scientists worked frantically. The machine was a massive, glowing core, humming with unstable energy. If activated, it could freeze reality long enough for humanity to survive. Or it could destroy everything. Are you sure about this? Monroe asked as she checked the final calculations. We don't know what will happen. We don't have a choice, the architect replied. It's either this, or we vanish. Hayes grabbed his rifle. Then let's make sure we have enough time to activate it. The final battle. Outside, the last soldiers of Earth fought against an enemy they couldn't even touch. The invaders weren't creatures or machines. They were forces of time itself. Ghostly figures, flickering in and out of existence, erasing everything they touched. Every bullet fired disappeared before it hit its target. Every missile launched never exploded. Reality itself was rejecting humanity. But they fought anyway. Hayes led the final charge, holding the line while Monroe and the architect activated the machine. Explosions of light rippled across the battlefield as soldiers vanished, one by one. Then, the reality anchor powered up. A world rewritten. The machine did not destroy the invaders. It did not stabilize time. Instead, it rewound it. Everything collapsed into darkness. The war, the destruction, the suffering, it all unraveled in an instant. Then, light. Hayes opened his eyes and found himself sitting in a small cafe. The world was peaceful. No war. no destruction. People walked the streets, laughing, living their ordinary lives. He looked at his hands, solid, real. He was still here. But something was different. The war had never happened. Monroe stood across the street, sipping coffee. The architect walked past, reading a newspaper. None of them remembered. None of them knew what had been undone. Hayes felt a chill run down his spine. Something had changed, but humanity was alive. And that was all that mattered. The price of survival. The night sky was different. People didn't notice at first. Life went on as usual. Buses rushed through streets, markets buzzed with activity, and children played in the parks. The news reported politics, entertainment, and sports, just like any other day. But for those who remembered, the world felt wrong. Daniel Carter stood on his rooftop, staring at the stars. He had studied the constellations since childhood, but tonight they were unfamiliar. Orion's belt was missing. The North Star was gone. He checked his phone's star map, but it didn't match reality. It was as if Earth had moved to a different part of the galaxy, a forgotten war. Daniel wasn't the only one who noticed. Across the world, small groups of people shared the same unease. They remembered something, a war, a great battle, a terrible enemy. But when they searched for proof, there was nothing. No records, no ruins, no scars on the land. History itself denied the war had ever happened. Government archives, books, and even personal journals told a different story. Humanity had never fought for survival. There were no alien invaders. There was no architect. And yet, in the minds of a few, echoes of the past remained. They dreamed of monstrous ships blotting out the sun. They remembered the sound of war, the screams of the dying. They saw flashes of a forgotten battlefield, a war they had fought, but one that no longer existed. And in their memories, one phrase repeated again and again. You were never meant to be, but now you are something new. A strange birth. Far from the city, in a quiet town, a woman named Emily Reynolds gave birth to a baby boy. The hospital staff called it a normal delivery. The baby was healthy, his heartbeat strong. But the moment his mother held him, something strange happened. His eyes opened, and they glowed. Not with the soft innocence of a newborn, but with a light that pulsed like distant stars. A deep, endless glow, as if he were looking beyond the world, seeing something no human should. The nurse gasped, stepping back. Doctors rushed in, whispering among themselves. They shone a light into his eyes, but the glow remained. Medical scans showed nothing unusual, yet everyone in the room felt it. This child was not normal. The watchers. That night, as Emily held her son, she felt an unfamiliar fear. The baby did not cry. He only watched. His glowing eyes studied the world, as if he already understood too much. Then, in the quiet darkness, she heard something. A whisper. Not from the baby, but from the space around her. A voice without a source, a presence without a body. We are still here. Emily's breath caught. She looked around, but the room was empty. Her heart pounded. The war was over, but something was still watching.